Today is Valentine's Day, and what would be a better way to celebrate the International Day of Love than to finally make this frequently requested Z-Link video? Zelda and Link, the couple that is meant to be but not meant to be. Nintendo has been teasing us with Z-Link content ever since Spirit Tracks. Love is, in most cases, not a sub-theme of the series. Still, Zelda and Link have fought together and for each other countless times. And in some rare occasions, it's quite obvious that there is something going on between the two. Breath of the Wild took that something to a whole other level. The game confirms that Zelda is indeed in love with her knight, making Z-Link a real possibility. I already uploaded a Z-Link video that analyzes their relationship in Breath of the Wild, and a lot of you enjoyed that I pointed out the finest details. So today I will be doing the same for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Let me just repeat that last phrase of emphasis. This analysis is for a Hyrule Warriors game. The goal of this game is gameplay, not storytelling. Not to say that Nintendo didn't do a great job delivering the story, but the point is, the story was never a priority. This is important because it helps to comprehend why Nintendo didn't provide the quantity of Z-Link many fans desired, yet it also demonstrates that any Z-Link content that can be found is even more special since it wasn't a necessity. Now that that's out of the way, let's study and question everything said and seen in the cutscenes, which, by the way, add up to over 2 hours of video footage, so please don't leave without a like. One last thing, I will solely focus on Link and Zelda. If you're interested, I'll make a separate video regarding Mipha, where her love for Link and situations such as Link taking the Zora armor would be discussed in detail. But for now, let's concentrate on Link and Zelda. Just to quickly recap, in Breath of the Wild, Zelda and Link have a rough start, but after Link saves Zelda's life despite her attitude, her guilt and admiration lead her to get to know Link and eventually fall in love with him. Her love for Link awakens her sealing powers, and when all memories are recovered, they are shown post-Calamity. Silent Princess petals are falling, which is said to represent endless love. Yes, these are already and long established facts, but it is important for Age of Calamity Z-Link analysis. But isn't this a different timeline? Why, yes, but one quote from Breath of the Wild is essential when it comes to Age of Calamity Z-Link. But you'll have to wait and see. I'm doing this chronologically, so bear with me. The first scenes of the prologue actually include disguised Z-Link, but that's Breath of the Wild related, so I'll save that for the end of the video. Age of Calamity allows us to take a look at Hyrule before the destruction caused by the Calamity. Even more interesting, we get to meet Link before his role as Zelda's appointed knight and get to be present when he and Zelda have their first real interactions. In Breath of the Wild, Zelda knows Link well before he's appointed her knight. That's shown by the way she mentions him in her diary. P.S. Tomorrow my father is assigning him as my appointed knight. Unfortunately, we don't know when and how they first met, so at this point in Age of Calamity, it's possible that Zelda already knows Link, but clearly they are far from being friends. On their way to the ancient tech lab, Link saves Zelda from a guardian beam. This is most likely the first time he saves her, since any previous event would have been mentioned in Zelda's diary and she wouldn't have been so surprised after he saved her from the blades of the Yiga. What's odd about this is that Zelda reacts extremely different to how she does in Breath of the Wild. She doesn't immediately fall for Link, which could be explained by their current relationship. In Breath of the Wild, Zelda treats Link poorly and ends up feeling guilty when she sees that he would still risk his life for her. In Age of Calamity, he is just a knight protecting his princess like any other guard would. Besides these two dorks. Since Link and Zelda have no past and no anticipated future, she sort of just dismisses it and focuses on the events happening around her. When Zelda first sees the pictures of Hyrule's dreadful future, she seems hopeless and talks about what will happen if she can't awaken her powers. The view switches to Link, who looks sunken into thought. Perhaps it's him wondering how he can be of help, and since he knows about the legend of the chosen hero, he might be thinking of himself by Zelda's side, aiding her to defeat the Calamity. But I'm getting ahead of myself. After all, that could just be courage and not affection. A little further down the road, we see Zelda and Impa walking the castle corridors after consulting the king. Zelda sends Impa off to inform Mipha and Daruk about their departure in the morrow, then proceeds to telling Terako about her struggles and failures regarding her sealing powers. To Zelda's surprise, Link shows up, making her somewhat uncomfortable, likely because she didn't fancy him overhearing her insecurities. What's interesting is the way Terako reacts to Zelda's mortification. It appears that he's a little confused by it, because Zelda acts very different around Link. Next we have the scene everyone is simping over. Link saves Zelda from the Yiga, very similar to Breath of the Wild, then Zelda is totally dumbstruck, again very similar to Breath of the Wild. Since this is in many ways an utter parallel to their developing relationship in Breath of the Wild, we can almost be certain that the developers planned for this to be the moment Zelda begins to really like Link. Zelda is at a loss of words, but she's trying to thank him and show her worries for his life. But you know what happens next. Teriko comes rushing back to scold Link, crushing their little moment. Not long after, the rest of the party joins the party, but luckily Zelda's attempt was not unnoticed by Link. Now they are both aware that their care for each other exceeds duty. I love all of the scenes revolving around the Lost Woods. See how these two guards here clearly see Hetsu and decide that he is more confusion than threat? Of course he isn't a threat, look at him jiggling his maracas. Yet Link smoothly makes his way back to be at Zelda's side. He doesn't have his shield up, he's not in his defense pose, so maybe he didn't really go to Zelda to save her per se, but rather just to stay close to her. This would explain why Zelda and Mipha are having this super awkward interaction once Link is out of sight again. Because just moments earlier, Link was standing by Mipha's side before he decided to switch to Zelda. They both noticed that shift, and yes, I'm totally nitpicking this. Moving on to one of my favorite moments in Age of Calamity. When they encounter Aster, Link is forced to fight melee versions of Hyrule's strongest warriors. He is quickly defeated and struggles to even get back up. His sword is broken and it's just not looking great. When Aster demands Zelda's immediate death, she reaches out for Link, and without a thought behind it, Link does the same. This is an amazing detail, thank you Nintendo! If Link was deserted of any feelings for Zelda, he wouldn't have reached out for her hand. He is a knight, bound to protect her. He may not have had many options in this situation, but reaching out for her hand is not something that would have prevented her death if the circumstances were ordinary. So in this particular situation, it was his heart that was acting, not his head. Furthermore, Link's true power shows an act of love, very identical to Zelda's powers, but we'll get to that. The sword chooses its hero. It's quite possible that the voice in the Master Sword Zelda heard in Breath of the Wild is speaking to Link as he's standing there. This moment here where he pulls the sword is more meaningful than you might think. Everyone knows that whoever tries to pull the sword will die on the spot if they are unworthy. So Link, unsure if he could be the chosen hero, attempts to pull the sword even if it could cause him to die. He risks it for Zelda and the kingdom, of course. When Pora teleports the group without their consent, you can actually see how Zelda not only looks at Link but grabs his arm. That causes Link to turn his head to look back at her before they fully dissolve. This is an incredibly small visual detail, but when it comes to animation, everything you see has a purpose. So even the most subtle details are there for a reason. Next up we have Zelda's longing for Link's confirmation. She is doubting herself as the day of Ganon's return quickly moves closer. When Impa tries to convince Zelda that she is of help even without her powers, Zelda looks up at Link, and only when he smiles and nods can her heart be at ease. Link makes her feel better. His character shows little enjoyment. He is very dedicated and loyal, strong and courageous, but he's rarely ever seen relaxed or expressive to any extent. When Zelda looked up at Link, desperate for his confirmation, it meant a lot to her that he gave her that sincere smile and the trust that she will do her best. Even though Link and Zelda weren't given the privacy that was essential for their relationship in Breath of the Wild, Urbosa helps Zelda to see just how similar she is to Link. By comparing the two, Zelda could see his burdens and flaws too, and his determination that mirrored hers. It's very different to Breath of the Wild, yet extremely similar at the same time. Just like Link and Zelda. After Ganon awakens and presumably takes the king's life, Zelda is devastated and falls to her knees. Link wants to comfort her, and if Impa hadn't sat by Zelda's side, he would have most likely listened and hugged her just as he did in Breath of the Wild. But these are just tiny details that caught my eye. Now we're getting to the more significant parts of the story. As Link fights the four blights once more at Fort Ateno, Zelda is dragged away by Impa, which is purposefully nearly identical to the king's false farewell. The first time this happened, Zelda was overwhelmed, everything was happening so quickly, and then suddenly her father was just gone. To her knowledge at least, he had died, and in this situation at Fort Ateno, Zelda was lucid, now knowing the consequences. All she's thinking is, if she doesn't take action now, she could lose Link forever. Thanks to Cass's song, in which she reveals that it was the love for her knight that awakened Zelda's powers, we can almost be positive that this is the same case. Zelda refuses to let Link die and hurries back to be by his side as he would if situations were reversed. We know from Mipha that there's also a specific thing she thinks about that helps her use her powers, and despite it never being spoken, we all know it's Link, a person her heart is devoted to. When Zelda uses her powers, she is thinking of nothing but Link. It's not her father or Hyrule that awakens her powers, it's her love for Link. This actually happens twice. When Zelda faces Calamity Ganon, her powers shine as she calls his name again. The third time she's using her powers, guess who she's looking at? But let's back up again. Before the Blood Moon begins, a shot is shown of a silent princess blooming in the foreground. It's well established that this flower carries the meaning of romance, and even the name references the silent hero and the princess. The game developers wouldn't have chosen to place that flower there and focus on it if there wasn't a deeper meaning to it. I think in one way the flower could represent the hope for Hyrule, but the next shot is of Link and Zelda, which is just a tiny bit suspicious. Another cute detail I want to point out is that one flower blooms and the other is closed. This is just the default model of the silent princess, and while I don't think that this was added on purpose, I do like the idea of those two flower hats representing Zelda and Link. One is open for love, the other has yet to open up. When Terrako presumably dies, Zelda is angry and hurt and holds a powerful speech. When she says the word future, the camera switches to Link. This could be a subtle hint that Link and Zelda have a future together. In Japanese productions especially, simple words and gestures often hold a much deeper meaning, so it's important to acknowledge the little things. At the end, when victory is claimed in battle, Zelda and Link exchange smiles. She even walks up to him to stand by his side as they look over Hyrule. And then they kiss. Oh wait, my bad, nope. They just smile and then the game ends. But there's a reason for everything, even for the shortfall of affection. Let me repeat my opening phrase once more. This is a Hyrule Warriors game. If Zelink is planned to happen, it's 100% reserved for the sequel. And I do believe that we will see some action in the future release. Even if it's just a hug or the unuttered but unmistakable confession of love, otherwise Nintendo would have put a little more effort in displaying their relationship platonically. You didn't think I was done yet, did you? We still have the secret ending that shows us how— wait a second, whoa, is Revali smiling? Okay, if that's possible, then Zelink is possible too. What I was going to say is, the secret ending has a very special way of rolling its credits. Terrako travels the land of Hyrule to visit each of the main characters. Finally, he comes to meet Link, who is at Castle Town, waving at his little friend. Terrako actually stops for a moment, allows Link to pet it, and then proceeds to speak to him. We can't understand what it's saying, but it's most likely asking for Link to follow. Link does just that and is brought to Zelda at the castle. There, Link and Zelda face each other, but are quickly joined by the other champions. Nevertheless, for a moment, Zelda and Link are shown as a duo, a couple, with the castle filling the scene beautifully. But all of this only matters if the game is canon. I mean, we see Revali smile, so its canonicity is very questionable. No, really though, everything should be canon since it's in a different timeline and it doesn't depend on what we see in Breath of the Wild.
Then there's you. The one part that doesn't add up.
Everything that happens before Link finds Terrako outside the castle must absolutely align with the Breath of the Wild lore. On page 367 of Creating a Champion, it states that the location of the Master Sword is unknown. Yet in Age of Calamity, the narrator says that the sword sleeps in the Korok Forest and that the group is clearly aware of it. Now okay, we could probably come up with some excuse for that, but it also states that Link was around the age of 12 or 13 when he pulled the Blade of Evil's Bane. In Age of Calamity, however, he is at least 17 years old. We know this because he's able to escort Zelda to the Spring of Wisdom on Mount Lanayru, which is not permitted to souls younger than 17. So whatever conclusion can be made from this game should not be taken in account when it comes to Breath of the Wild or its sequel.
None of this makes any sense.
It was advertised as a prequel, but it kinda, sorta, really isn't. The game stands by itself, and it should be seen as such. Now, what you've all been waiting for. Just kidding, I bet you totally forgot, but I promised to reveal the prologue Zelink at the end of my video. Many people actually missed this detail, but in Zelda's study we see a silent princess on the shelf. In one of the memories, Zelda says, and I quote, "It's a rare endangered species. We can't get them to grow domestically, The princess can only thrive out here in the wild. So why did you rip it out and potted it, princess? It could very well be the same silent princess that Zelda and Link found on their trip, since she says how rare they are, and judging by her excitement, it's likely that this is one of the only silent princesses she came across. Maybe she kept it as a reminder to this beautiful day she spent with Link, maybe he gave it to her. It's the only memory in which Zelda is seen perfectly happy, and that's something to hold on to. If you want to see Link and Zelda together but can't wait for Nintendo to make the first move, go check out my Instagram and Twitter accounts where I post a couple of Zelink and other Zelda comics per week. I often let my followers decide which course of action my comics take, so don't miss out. Your decision might change my comics. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I really can't wait to make a Zelink video for the sequel. As always, thanks for watching. Now go spread some love. Happy Valentine's Day, have a nice Sunday, and I'll see you for the next video. Bye!